Yo, 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 it's Mickey Factz, and I want to give a big shout out to my guy, Mikey T, the movie star. Keep it locked right here. Smicky.
Man, Mickey Factz, I appreciate you joining me today on Report Card Radio, man. Welcome to the show.
What's up, brother? Thank you for having me. It's a blessing.
Can you tell me about how life was for you growing up in New York, coming out of the Bronx?
Yeah, man, life was interesting for me, as it was for most New York, kids in the inner city. Um, Hip hop was just very, very, very prevalent. You know what I mean? Like everything was hip hop in the '90s. So, you know, we would go to school and we was debating on who was the best, Method Man or Big. Was it Nas or Jay? Was it Busta or, who was this Eminem cat? We was just kind of living life being from the Mecca, which was the Bronx. And then, eventually, discussions of hip hop turned into engagement into hip hop while being in school. So that's essentially, how I got into the culture as well as just kind of growing up. The Bloods and the Crips was kind of formulating in the East Coast around that time as well. And, being a New York fan was good. The Yankees were winning a lot. The Knicks went to the finals twice. The World Trade Center got bombed, and then the planes hit it in 2001. So it was an interesting time to be a New Yorker in the '90s to the early 2000s.
So what age were you, and how did you actually get involved with making music yourself?
I started writing my own music in 1997. I was really early. I was reciting Bone Thug lyrics in 95, 96. And then that turned into me writing my own rhymes. And then I was doing parody rap, like even at like 98, 99. I was, taking, the big thing at that time was 40 Thieves. And they did the No Pigeons joint. when it's like, when it was No Scrubs.
Yep.
So again, hip hop was a way of life for us as kids. So we was like, you know what? Like, let's start doing that with other songs. So at that time, and Pigeons was a thing in the Bronx, because the Sporty Thieves is right uptown, like in Yonkers. So 9-9, Rough Riders came out with that album. Back then we had the CD players, so we brought CD players and tape and Walkmans to school. So some of us had the Rough Rider album. Jigga, instead of Jigga, it was Pigeons, and then I had to rewrite the whole thing to make it fit with Pigeons. And then from that, I just started to write my own music and record for the first time in like 1998, which was insane for me at that time.
Where were you going to record at that point? Did one of your guys like have a studio set up, and was he engineering for you? How did you get your whole process together?
I was working with my man DJ Unexpected, and at the time he had a very independent label called FU, which was Forever Unmerciful, but it was FU Records. And up the block from where he lived, there was a studio. This guy had a studio in his apartment, in his house, and at that time there was no such thing as Pro Tools. There was no such thing as Logic or any of these devices that people were using. So if you went in the studio, your verses had to be done one take most times, because it was expensive to run through that much DAT tape. So I kind of knocked my verse out quick. My partner at the time, I was in a group. The group was called, what was this group? Oh, the group was called DEFCON 5. You're getting a lot of information. A lot of people never really asked me that. I had to put my glasses on at first because I had just came from a nap, but I think I'm waking up now.
So when you were Renegade?
Yes.
Okay.
DEFCON 5. And we had a single. We put a single out. That single was vinyl, and we made tapes. The single was called The 6 Express, and the B-side was Live 9-8. You know, the Six Express is the best, player haters is vex, pull out my text because they play me too close like next. Like that was like my first rap ever written, you know, and I was doing that in 1997, 98. So, you know, or
So what was it that interested you in N.E.R.D so early on?
you know, I was a big fan of Pharrell. When N.O.R.E did that record, um, Super Thug, that was 1999. And I was just a fan of that sound. It was a different sound. And then after he did that record with Pharrell, I think the next record was Oh No by the Neptunes. And I was like, yo, this sound is dope. And then the next thing you know, they started doing more records with more people. And then they did a rock album. Like it wasn't a Pharrell album first. It was N.E.R.D right after like a couple singles. And I was a fan of, you know, the rock production that they were doing. I thought it was dope. It resonated with a lot of people, but it didn't go as far as it should have. Like they weren't like a big rock group, but they were dope. They were a very dope group. And, you know, I dived headfirst into it, and then I kind of just left it alone. And then when it was time to put my first mixtape together, my A&R at the time, Steve O, he was like, yo, what you need to do is you need to, you know, you need to produce and sample N.E.R.D and create a new mixtape called In Search of N.E.R.D and get noticed by Pharrell. And it was a fantastic idea because that's what got my name out there.
So could you take me into it? Was it being In Search of N.E.R.D that led you to getting the attention of Pharrell?
Yeah, I mean, that was unprecedented and unheard of at that time.
Yeah, for sure.
Because those beats you couldn't rap. Well, you could rap over them, but a lot of people didn't want to rap over that stuff. You know, all the MCs that were on the internet were on Hip Hop Game. I couldn't get on Hip Hop Game, and it was MySpace. So we just did it off of the strength of the people that were on MySpace and the underground scene in New York. And putting that project together, we didn't shoot no music videos for it, nothing. YouTube was 1 year old at this time. And we just kind of, you know, made this project off of the back of my, you know, production skills with my engineer at the time, Whitebone. We were looping records and adding stuff to the records. And then, you know, I was just writing about me and my friends' stories, right? And that became the project. And it got to Pharrell and his team so much so that, you know, my song Locked Away was the second song on the official Glow in the Dark tour mixtape. You know, for that tour that they did when it was N.E.R.D, Rihanna, Lupe, and Kanye. My song was number 2 on that mixtape at that time, which was a huge deal for us. We didn't realize that we didn't realize that, you know, N.E.R.D and Pharrell's team was really interested in it like that.
So can you break it down for me when you actually got the chance to meet and work with Pharrell?
I don't think I worked with him in the studio, but I met Pharrell. I was on tour with Pharrell. Shout out to Heineken. Heineken had put together this Red Series tour in the late 2000s, and I was on a couple of dates for that. So I had did Atlanta, and I had did New Orleans. And me and Pharrell were on tour on that New Orleans date. I was able to meet him at that show. And 3 years after the project came out, you know, we had a conversation backstage, and, you know, he was like, yeah, man, you know, that project was very, very crazy. Nobody had ever done anything like that before. And my favorite song was Locked Away, which was why it was number 2 on that project. You know what I mean?
That's dope, man, how you changed the course of history by releasing that In Search of N.E.R.D project.
Yeah, it was a crazy time, man. It was a really crazy time.
So let's talk about the XXL magazine, man. Can you tell me about making it onto the freshman list for the class of 2009? I had actually previously interviewed Kid, who was on the list as well. Not that same year, but later on.
Yeah, I mean, when I got on that cover, they weren't trying to do the cover anymore. It's interesting how, you know, history works, right? Like every year they do it, but when we did it, it was the second time they did it. But the first time they did it, it didn't sell well at all. It didn't sell too well. People weren't into that that magazine that they did, the one with Lupe on the cover. It didn't move a lot of units. So when the Source got taken over by Daytwan Thomas, he decided he wanted to do it again. And they said to him, listen, this magazine that you want to do over again, it didn't do well the first time. So if you do this, this is on you. But Daytwan was really tapped into the internet. And a lot of hip hop didn't really foresee the future of the internet at that time. Everything was still street oriented, DJ based, club based, and they were really avoiding how powerful the internet was. So when they reached out for all us 10 MCs, 9 of us were dominating the internet. Like, you couldn't turn on the internet without seeing the 9 of us. The 10th MC was Ace Hood, who was a big Miami street-based radio artist. But the other 9 MCs were heavy on the internet. So when that magazine came out, people were like, who are these people that was still stuck in the street era? But the internet ate it up. They ate that magazine up, and it was the best-selling magazine of that year for XXL, aside from, whenever Eminem decided to be on the magazine cover, because we transcended just, our fan bases. It was the internet. Like, it was everybody that probably didn't pick up a magazine. They saw us every day because we were posting stuff every day online. So it was easier for them to pick up and gravitate towards that. So that cover was monumental, and they started to do it every year since, because of our magazine. It's a very big deal back then. I got on that cover because I was putting a song out every week for free. I was giving out free music every week. And that was unheard of in 2008. Like, people weren't giving out free music once a week. That was not the norm. And we changed the trajectory of how music was released at the high volume that it was at that time.
So on that list, actually, the class of 2009, it was Wale, B.O.B., Charles Hamilton, Asher Roth, Corey Guns, Blue, yourself, Ace Hood, Currency, and Kid Cudi. You all were featured. What do you remember most about your class?
I just remember it was a very lyrical class, but it was also a very innovative class. Everybody that was on that list kind of, birthed something in their own right, and spawned a lot of people that mimicked and emulated their style afterwards. Like, you think about Kid Cudi, think about people that just kind of did depression, sing-song, rap after that. Like, Asher, aside from, like, when you think of, Asher, right, before him, you had Eminem and like Bubba Sparks that gained popularity. But, Asher was this, white MC who was really, really talented, co-signed by Canon and Drama, and just lyrical MC that was crazy. And, after him, then you get the Mac Millers and you get, the G-Eazy's. But it doesn't happen without Asher, because, he was the first young white artist to kind of break that mold. You look at somebody like Corey, right? Like, without Corey, you probably don't get, a lot of the speed rappers, the rappers that, are lyrical, speedy, and it's just, I can go on and on. B.O.B., like, right? Like, when he first came out, like, people were saying he was the next Andre 3K. Musical, Southern, creative. It's just, it was just a class that, spawned so much talent on that class. And a lot of us, are still out here, making music and keeping the name alive for hip hop.
Can you tell me about working with Drake early on in both of your careers?
Yeah, Drake. Drake at the time, I had known of Drake from MySpace. I didn't know he was on Degrassi, and I found him on MySpace. I thought he was a dope MC on MySpace. Like he had this record with Trey Songz called "Replacement Girl" that was on his MySpace page, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's dope." And he had a lot of followers on MySpace, but a lot of it was television followers, and that was unprecedented too, to like be this television actor who was also talented at making music, but it didn't come across as believable. He runs Omen, the producer. He did a couple of records for Fab back in the day, and he wanted to put together this record called Overdose on Life. And he was like, "Yo, I got this Canadian artist named Drake on it." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I know about Drake." He's like, "All right, I want you to get on it." So I get on the record. Drake already has a chorus and his verse on it. So I was like, "Okay, this is hard." So I put my verse on it afterwards, body it. Omen hits me up as like, "Yo, I want to get Travis and the Gym Class Heroes on this record." And I was like, "All right." Now I had already known Travis because I had did this remix for Arms Race. I did the Arms Race remix with Kanye, Fall Out Boys, and the Gym Class Heroes, and Wayne. I was on the official remix. So I was already cool with Travis. So I just picked up the phone and was like, "Yo, Trav, my man Omen wants you to get on a record with him and me." He's like, "I know who, he already worked with me like twice." So he was like, "I bet I got you." And then, Omen put the whole record together, and then, we released it. When we released it in like April 2008. Nobody even knew who Drake was. Like nobody knew who he was. The record was really pushed, online by me because I had a huge name at the time. And Travis, his fan base was huge because he was with the Gym Class Heroes. But, and Drake kind of, rode that wave a little bit, but he was always talented, right? Like he already had the chorus laid down. His verse was fire when he laid it down. So, it was a dope time. We got cool during that time period, and, he started to, put together, so far gone during that time. Met Wayne, and, he is where he is now.
So when you had worked with Drake, this was just prior to him working with Cash Money, Young Money?
Yeah. He hadn't even met Jay Prince Jr. yet. He hadn't met Wayne yet. He hadn't met any of them. It was just him and 40, really. That's all it was.
That's what's up, man. Having the opportunity to work with one of the biggest artists of the new generation, what type of gratification does that give you as an artist?
I mean, it just solidifies, my my vision in terms of who I work with, right? Like, because at that time, you got to remember, like, I worked with him before he was who he was. I had worked with Cudi before he became who he was. I had did 2 records with Kendrick before he, is where he is now. So I always kind of know when somebody is talented, it's just a matter of the people kind of seeing the same talent that I see. And I'm just grateful to have gotten in with Drake, before he became who he is. Same with Kendrick and same with Cudi and a host of other MCs that I've worked with and had the ability to get in the studio with.
Can you tell me about signing your first major record deal?
Yeah, I signed with Jive Records in 2010. That was always the goal. I don't even know for a lot of artists if it was about selling records. I think for a lot of artists, it's like, yo, I need a deal. At that time, I was like, I gotta get a deal. I gotta get a record deal. And once I got it, it was like, man, it was a milestone for me. It was a special time for me because I had worked so hard to get there. 13 years to get to that spot and that place where I could put a project out, on a major label. It was satisfying for me. It was an amazing experience signing all of those pages. It took a very long time. When you sign a deal, you sign a ton of pages. And Jive welcomed me with open arms until they folded in 2011.
So I want to ask, like, Did the labels contact you, or were you running around to the different labels with your music? How did that go about when you signed with Jive?
I was having meetings with a lot of labels like Atlantic Records, Def Jam. Capitol was in LA, so it was tough to kind of get to them. But Universal, Jive, so it was a constant. You know, the labels were in New York City or LA, and I lived in New York City, so it was a consistent thing of going to the labels, having taken meetings once my name was bubbling and buzzing, and trying to figure out a great situation, you know, a place or a home for me. And there were only 3 labels that were really interested, you know, towards me getting signed. And it was Glass Note, where they signed Childish Gambino. Def Jam, Lenny S was very interested in signing me at Def Jam. And Jive Records with Jeff Sledge. So those were relationships that I had over the years. You know, Lenny S is from the Bronx, so he always had, you know, a love for me as a Bronx MC. And Jeff Sledge, I had known him since 2006. He had heard the In Search of the N.E.R.D mixtape and was interested since then. He just signed me he had signed me 4 years later. And Glass Note, they were interested in the sound of music I was doing. So those were the 3 major labels that were interested in signing me, and I just chose to go with Jive.
So with everything that you were doing, from, you know, the collaborations with Drake to the freshman list, what opportunities did Jive bring to the table once you signed?
When I got to the label with Jive, it was just more of it was a clout thing, honestly. Like their name held weight in the industry. They were the biggest pop label in the industry at the time. You know, they had Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears, R. Kelly, Chris Brown, you know, all of these pop artists were there at that time. So we were able to, you know, have that under our resume whenever we would go anywhere. So they brought that notoriety and that clout when it came to getting interviews. They brought 106 in Park to me. I did 106 in Park twice. I was able to get a record with Marsha Ambrosio at the time, who was with Flo. She was the singer from Floetry. She was on my second single. I was able to get in some sessions with Miguel at the time. They wanted me to do this Music Matters tour with J. Cole. They wanted me to open up for that, but I don't know why we didn't take that tour. I forgot what happened. We didn't take that tour.
Can you tell me about your connection to battle rap? Like, what's your earliest memories of getting involved in the culture?
I mean, that was something that we just did in the city in New York early on. You know, people would come to my school to battle me because my name was buzzing so crazy in the Bronx at that time. And then once you kind of get crazy in your city or your town, you kind of venture out. So I started venturing out to 42nd Street into Harlem, and I was battling there. And I got cool with Mook and Rex and Lux early on in their careers when they were on Smack DVD. I never got a chance to rap in front of Smack. I didn't venture into that. I went to the internet while they, you know, took over the DVD space. When Smack decided he wanted to do URL, I thought it was incredible, you know, and I followed them. And, you know, in 2010, I was one of, you know, at that time, I'm still a signed artist. So I was going to their events, you know, as a signed artist. I was the only signed artist going to their events at that time. And I saw where it was headed. I saw it building. And I wanted to be a part of that. You know, I wanted to be a part of that culture because I thought it was a very exciting culture. And, you know, I ended up, you know, going to their events. And then, you know, once you go enough, you know, people start using your name in their rounds and in their raps. And eventually I started, you know, I did like 3 battles. I did one with Danger Zone. I did one with Daylight. I did one with DNA. Oh, I did a 4th one with this kid named Cash Bills over Beats. And, you know, I just kind of wanted to experience it, you know, a couple times. But it's not really something that I feel like I can do on a consistent basis. Those guys are extremely talented at what they do, and they do it way better than I could ever do it and did ever do it back then. It's just that I'm able to do it, you know?
So, what do you think about the way that Drake has embraced battle rap? I know you said that you were one of the first guys with a name to show up, but now it's gotten so much more famous. Was that something that you expected to see from a guy like Drake, who is now dominating the mainstream, though?
Yeah. I knew so. Drake was a fan of it from the beginning. Like, you know, you got to remember, like he's a Canadian MC, so anything that was popping to somebody from an outside source, and anything that was happening in New York at that time, people, you know, people drove to that, right? So he was a fan of it. I knew at some point he was going to get involved. I didn't realize it would be with caffeine and how much he's co-signed it. But, you know, it's a sport that most celebrities enjoy. They just kind of never, you know, put their arm around it and was like, yeah, I'm supporting this. You know, they would stop by for an event, like even the Summer Madness too, when it was Diddy, Busta Rhymes, and Q-Tip that showed up, you know, like that was a big deal in 2012. And people were confused as to why Puff was at a battle event. But that was all put in motion, you know, by the powers that be to make that happen, you know.
So you're saying that we probably won't see you in another high caliber battle like with DNA and Daylight, or do you see something like that in 2022 for you?
I wanted it to happen, but I don't think it's gonna happen. I just can't see it happening. It was supposed to be. I wanted to take Iron Solomon, but I don't know if that will happen anymore. I think he's really focused on his NFT business currently, and I respect that. So I don't think I'm gonna be taking any battles, you know, going into 2022. I don't know when I'm gonna go back into the ring, but the next time I do it will be the last time.
Yeah, it was dope seeing you in front of those crowds on URL and King of the Dot, though.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So let me ask you, man, what was it that bridged the gap and really helped you form a relationship with Lupe Fiasco and the All City Chess Club?
That was built off of me touring with Lupe in Japan. We had a tour in Japan in 2009, and we kind of built a friendship from there off and on. We would speak to each other whenever we see each other and just had this high level of respect. And then it just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. And then I did this Mickey Mouse project that he heard, and he thought it was excellent. Thought it was excellent, excellent, excellent. And we became like super, super friends from that point forward. I helped him start his school for lyricism called SOSA, the Society of Spoken Art. I toured with him from 2013 on. Whenever he go on tour and I want to go, you know, I just call him and I'm able to be on any show I want that he performs at. And, you know, it's just that kind of brotherhood that we have that's going on now. I could say like 13, 14 years now, you know, and I'm just blessed to kind of be involved with such a prominent, legendary MC such as himself, you know. And the All City Chess Club, I was added late, but by the time I was added, the joint was kind of disbanded. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I'm definitely a big Lupe guy, especially the kick push era. But what type of guidance was Lupe able to show you early on?
I mean, he was going through the label situation at Atlantic. So, you know, just kind of seeing how he was trying to move and moving from an independent standpoint with his team gave me a lot of guidance in that regard. It was more about action as opposed to like giving me life lessons. I would just kind of be around to see how he was moving. And eventually, you know, it was like, yo, whenever he's in New York, he's reaching out to me. And whenever I'm in Chicago or LA, I'm reaching out to him and we just hanging out. Sometimes it's not even about music. It was just us just, you know, coming together and putting ideas together and thoughts together. And that's the kind of relationship we have, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's my brother, man.
Aside from that, let me get your take on Cassidy making his return to battle rap, man. Have you been a fan of it?
Yeah. I think it's healthy, you know, for the culture to see someone of his caliber, you know, come back into the culture, into the sport, to keep it going. And his next match is with Freeway. You know, it's a classic 20 years in the making rematch. I think that's very exciting for people who grew up in that time frame to see, you know, how far they've come and where they could potentially take the culture with their respective fan bases too.
Yeah, that's one thing, man. Cassidy has been one of the most interesting battle rappers for me to watch, as well as Sue Surf. You know, those are a couple of the Hollow the Don. These are a couple of the guys on my radar. Who are the top battle rappers in your mind that you always like to watch out for?
Geechee Gotti,
Salute. Rum
A-Ward,
Nitty, you said?
yeah, Rum Nitty, A-Ward. Yeah, those are the three. Those are the main three people that I kind of look out for every time they drop. Charlie Clips, you know, those four.
Yeah, man. Mickey Factz, man. I got to say, I was really hyped watching your battles today with Daylight and DNA, man. You know, a couple of Titans. I saw the one with Cash Bills. I didn't know it was on Beat. I'm definitely going to check that out with some of the recent battles on Beat. I mean, Saigon and Vado at the MC War. I'm definitely going to give that a look. But just seeing you up there with a veteran in my eyes like Daylight, man, I was like, wow. You know, just seeing what's next for you, man. There's got to be a bag for you in 2022 when it comes to battle rap, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a bag thing for me. It's more of an opponent. And I don't think I have any opponent. There's nobody really that I want to face or see, really. So, except for Iron Solomon. And, you know, that's not what his mindset is at, you know, sadly. So, you know, I think I'm just going to probably sit 2022 out until, you know, he decides he wants to return into the culture. Then I'll return, you know, for my last one. But for right now, I don't see me, you know, stepping into the ring. There's not anybody that I would like to face currently that can go to RBE. You know, that's what my next one is going to be.
And how about projects? Do you have any new singles, or are you working on a new album currently? What you got going on in that department?
Yeah, I'm working on a couple new projects that should be all releasing next year. I was trying to get something out this year called Incognito, but I'm going to push it back a couple of months, waiting for some features to come in. The last project I put out was The Narrative with Blue and N.O.R.E. Did really well. So I'm looking to put out, you know, a couple projects next year to, you know, just keep my fans, you know, engaged with what it is that I do, and a couple big records with a couple big people. I'm doing a Bars app challenge right now with, you know, about 80 MCs giving away $2,000 and a free feature for myself. For the first place winner, second place winner gets to rap on Sway. New show called Overtime that's on the Roku channel, and the third place gets $500 from me. You know, so, you know, I'm trying to give back to the people currently, but, you know, 2022, you know, we're back to making music and killing these freestyles and, you know, just trying to, you know, keep my name afloat in the culture as I usually do every year.
Mickey Factz, man, I really appreciate you coming to the show, man. Like I told you, you got a fascinating story. I really appreciate you for sharing a piece of it with me, though.
Thank you, brother. I truly appreciate this interview. It really means a lot to me. You know, I wish nothing but love, prosperity, and success to you and your platform as it continues to grow in, you know, the upcoming months and years, brother. Much love and respect to you.